Now let's do a summary of what we saw in the previous video about the position of the fetus. So we have the orientation, which is the relationship of the longitudinal axis of the fetus with the longitudinal axis of the mother, and we can have longitudinal orientation, or we can have transverse orientation, or we can have an oblique orientation, but remember that this is a transitory orientation. So basically it's longitudinal or transverse. Then we can have the presentation. So for longitudinal orientation we have cephalic presentation, and we have breech presentation. For transverse orientation we have shoulder presentation, and we can also have other presentation, which is compound presentation, which is when we have several parts of the fetus that are presenting to the birth canal, or we can have phonic presentation, which is when we have that the umbilical cord is the presenting part. Then we have so this is orientation, this is presentation. Then we have what is called attitude. So for cephalic presentation we have an attitude, which is maximally flexion of the head. This is called the vertex presentation or occiput presentation. Here the presenting part is the occiput, and the presenting part is the posterior fontanelle, but is the occiput what we use as the toconomic point. We can have a maximally extended neck. This is the face presentation. Here the mentum is the presenting part, this is the toconomic point. We can have partially flexion of the head. This is a military or bregma presentation or sinciput presentation. Here the presenting part is the anterior fontanelle, and we can have partially extended neck. This is the Brown presentation or deferente presentation. Here the toconomic point is the nasal bone. This one, the partial one, eventually are going to be converted into a vertex presentation or a face presentation. Remember, these are called attitudes, but instead of saying the maximal flexion attitude of this cephalic presentation, we just said the vertex presentation. That's the short way. For breech presentation, we can have frank attitude. We can have complete and incomplete. Here the toconomic point toconomic point here is the occiput, here the toconomic point is the mentum, here the toconomic point is the nasal bone, here the toconomic point is the sacrum, and here the toconomic point is the acromion. And for each of these we can have variety of position, which is I will put it here. Anterior, posterior, left, right, depending on the toconomic point. But this is left, posterior, right, posterior. So left occiput posterior, or left mentum posterior, or right occiput posterior, or right mentum posterior, for example. Here is left anterior and right toconomic point anterior. So for each one of these we have 8 variety of position or variation of positions. So we have, for longitudinal orientation, we have cephalic and bridge presentation. For transverse orientation, we have the shoulder presentation. Longitudinal orientation, bridge, cephalic presentation, we have attitude of maximal flex neck, maximally extended neck, partial flex neck, partial extended neck. This is vertex presentation, which has the toconomic point as occiput, the toconomic point of the maximal extension attitude of the cephalic presentation of the longitudinal orientation is the mentum, the toconomic point of the attitude, the partial extended attitude of the cephalic presentation of the longitudinal orientation is the nasal bone. The toconomic point is the sacrum for the different presentation of the bridge presentation. Frank presentation, complete presentation, or incomplete presentation. And the toconomic point for the shoulder is the acromion. Each one of these toconomic points, occiput, mentum, nasal bone, sacrum, acromion, can have 8 variation of position. I will do the example with the occiput, but we can have the same variation of position with the mentum, nasal bone, sacrum, acromion. So occiput anterior, left occiput anterior, left occiput posterior, occiput posterior, right occiput posterior, right occiput, right occiput anterior, occiput anterior. We review these more slowly in the previous video.